What's up? What's up? What's up? Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. It's Monday. I hope everyone had a great weekend. Okay. I had a decent weekend. Outside of me being a Knicks fan, it wasn't a bad weekend. All right. The Knicks are done. You guys know I'm a Knicks fan from New York. Grew up being a Knicks fan. I loved MJ. I loved the Bulls because MJ was there, but I was always a Knicks fan. We got close, but it is what it is. We lost. And I kind of honestly felt like we were going to lose after game one. I think those games, those series where like you give a game away, those be the series that messes everything up. You know what I mean? I can think back when Cleveland lost game one that year. J.R. Smith did that terrible turnover or whatever. It's that feeling like when you mess up a game that you had in the bag, it's pretty much over. And we couldn't afford to lose two games at home, but it is what it is. All right. So today I'm gonna just speak on I'm going to speak on Jaime Munguia, speak a little bit on him. I'm going to speak a little bit on Jamal Charlo and Caleb Plant. They had their fights on PBC. I was definitely going to go live, but I totally forgot the Knicks was playing that night. And I was going to like go live and try to watch it. I was like, that's not going to work. That's not going to work because if I go live and the Knicks is getting crushed, I'm going to be pissed off, and I can't just cover boxing and watch the Knicks at the same time. I couldn't do it. So I was thinking of a way to do it. I mean, the card started at 8 p.m. The PBC card started at 8 p.m. at the same exact time that the Knicks game started. So it just wasn't going to work for me. I really wanted to jump on with you guys. I was home. I was here. I was ready. I had planned all week to go live for this fight and everything, but I totally forgot the Knicks based on the schedule, how the games was going that they played Saturday. And I probably wasn't thinking about that because they were an elimination game Thursday night. Being that they won that game, I wasn't thinking ahead like, oh, they're going to play again on Saturday. So that's how all that worked out. Shout out to everyone that's in the chat. Luther Rice, what's up? Mike G, what's good? Leon, Leon, what's up? Romeo, was good with you? Romeo says the Thunder versus Pacers finals. Who would you have predicted that? Yeah, well, OKC, I predicted for them to go, but I wasn't predicting the Pacers to go, at all. Like that's crazy. Cleveland was out, Boston was out, Knicks was out. Like for them to get through all of that and make it to the very end is crazy. But I definitely predicted OKC to be there, and I'm predicting OKC to win in 6. That's my prediction for that series. What's up, Gio? All right. So yeah, let's move forward from basketball. I don't think anything else major is going on. But I wanted to start this video by saying rest in peace to Mike McCallum. Okay. The body snatcher, Jamaican, Jamaican legend. This is a guy that I had the privilege, and I told this story on the channel before. Probably the week of the fight back in Pacquiao Mayweather week when I was out in Vegas. I know I told the story then. You know what? I should go back to watching that video. There's a video that I did. I was doing a lot of content when I was out there during that week. And I was just giving you daily updates, right? Whenever I got back to my hotel room, because I was there for like the whole week. And it was just a wild week. Like, I went to different events. Like there was a Hall of Fame event where I had a privilege of meeting Mike McCallum because I was there with a friend that I actually met that week by enough. Now we're still good friends to this day. But he had a mutual friend that was close with Mike McCallum. And I had a privilege of hanging out with him and having for a couple hours. Like we went to a couple spots together. Mike McCallum so random, so super randomly. You know, we just having some drinks, and this is actually exactly 10 years ago because I think Manny Pacquiao against Mayweather was May of 2025. Correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, 2015. And he passed away the other day at 69 years old. I guess he was 59. So we was just having a good time. You know, we were at the Hall of Fame event, which I met him there. I met a few other people there, but I met him there, and Roy Jones had just left. And, you know, after, you know, having a couple drinks, he was just talking trash about Roy a little bit. Like he could have beat him if he was younger, a little younger. You know, he couldn't really do nothing to the older version of me that night that we fought. And then we left and we went to another spot. And then my boy was like trying to get him to go home. And that's it. I'm gonna leave the story at that. But I had a privilege of hanging out with him. Now I went on this trip with my father, but I did not go to this event with my father that night because I was hanging out with my boy that, you know, I had just met that week, but we were hanging out together. So I wasn't with my dad during this evening, but I had a privilege of hanging out with him. I didn't really know much about him until, to be honest, it wasn't until like later when he was already older. Like I didn't watch his fights with like the Hawk and Tony live. I don't remember watching those fights live. I remember watching the only fight that I remember watching live with Mike McCallum was when he fought Roy Jones, because I was like watching Roy Jones heavy at the time. So when he fought Julian Jackson, that was, well, first of all, I was like a toddler at that time, so I definitely wasn't watching it at that point. But when he fought James Toney, that was one of those fights that I saw later, like after the internet was out, and I watched online. And you know, I had heard about, you know, I pretty much heard about how good he was back then, defensive fighter and all that stuff. So those fights I didn't watch until many years later. But you know, from what I remember, you know, watching his fights, he was the first to beat Julius Jackson, knocked him out 2 rounds. The Hawk at that time was just destroying everybody. And even after the fight, he was knocking everybody out. But it seemed like whenever he lost, he got knocked out himself. But great fighter, never been stopped before. Iron chin, great defender. Gave us 2 really good fights with James Toney. Just phenomenal chess player in the ring in there. I mean, defender, one of the best out there. You know what I mean? And he was a puncher too. You know what I mean? He'll stop you too. You know what I mean? He's a defender that will knock you out at the same time. We don't get too many of those these days. It seems like everyone that are considered, a lot of the fighters today that are considered very good defensively, don't really, you know, knock people out like that, you know, and it's been like that for some time now. But him, you know, people like James Toney, they're in a different class. Like not only were they phenomenal as defensive fighters, but they will also knock your ass out. You know what I mean? So rest in peace to Mike McCallum. And, you know, again, I'm just glad I was even in the same space, you know, socially with him and for a couple of hours as well. You know, it was a good time. And, you know, I mean, he's not that old, 69 years old. But, you know, my condolences to him, you know, his family and everything. And, you know, definitely a legend in the game. All right. All right. So, oh man. All right. So these 3 topics, man, they all kind of like sync together. All right. Jaime Munguia. I haven't made any content about him popping, but I was going to the next time I went live. I knew I was going to. You know, not too much. You know, he failed a drug test that was, I think this test was administered after the Bruce Saras fight. Which he won the rematch, right? He went on points. I believe this test was like right after the fight. Okay, and too much testosterone. Okay. Last time I checked, they were I guess they're waiting for the B sample. I mean, we already know we've been doing this for years. It's A sample, B sample thing. It's all the same thing. Like it's all the same. It's all the same tests, right? So boom. Everybody's talking about it, mainly because he's part of Eddie Reynoso's camp, right? Eddie has had several fighters with his camp that's popped dirty on certain tests for different tests, different reasons. Canelo at one point did. Who else was there? This guy, Oscar Valdez, who's the other fighter now, Jaime Munguia, who's literally with Canelo in his camp right now, or at least prepared with him for this fight and fought on the undercard of the Canelo fight. So those three, I know for a fact, was with Eddie during the time. And I think everybody else is naming like guys like Ryan Garcia wasn't with Eddie at the time. He popped dirty. But look, listen, I really don't care. I hate to say it. I really don't care. My stance has never changed. The longer we go with going 2 years, you know, letting these guys get in these 6-month, 1 year suspensions, it's not going to change anything, man. You know, and if the British board, you know, being that this fight was out in Saudi Arabia, they could suspend him for numerous years. But, you know, at the end of the day, you know, at the end of the day, like he could still fight here in America. You know what I mean? So I don't know what this is going to do, you know, unless the sanctioning bodies is going to change things, or I really don't know. But am I surprised? Not really. Not that I was sitting around waiting for Jaime Munguia to pop dirty. All right. I think for me, you know, I was never a guy that was predicting guys to fail drug tests. You know, something would need to happen for me to be suspicious of them. There's one fighter currently boxing, and I've been suspicious for him for a couple of years now. There's one. Not going to say his name. All right. But he is a Latino fighter, and he does throw a lot of punches. One guy that I've always been suspicious of. But he's the only one right now that I'm suspicious of. Now, I know a lot of fighters are using drugs. Okay. I understand that. I think it's lazy when certain people pop dirty on a test and everybody says, well, everybody's using it. Everybody's juicing it. Everybody's cycling it out or whatever. Everybody's using it. You know what I mean? I hate when people say that when like, this goes back to what I was saying the other day. When it comes to boxing fans, media, you know, even content creators like myself, there's selective outrage, right? Like, I don't care about how many Munguia popped in like that. Why? Because, like, like I never really rated him that high. I really did. I never really rated him that high. I think Jaime Munguia is one of the best example you can use in this generation that was matched very well throughout his career. Like the timing of the opponents, they were matched. Like what Golden Boy was doing, I know he's with Top Rank right now, but what Golden Boy was doing with him, they were matching him with the perfect people at the right time, at the very right moment. Whereas even if he were to struggle in certain fights, he should still pull off a lot of these fights. And a lot of those fights went that way until, you know, he met with Canelo. They did exactly what needed to be done to get him that big fight with Canelo. Even if it wasn't with Canelo, if it was with another big name, they did exactly what they needed to do to match him right to get there. And when he lost to Bruno Saras, I guess him and his team, whoever's to blame with this, I'm not going to sit here and tell you it's Eddie Reynoso. I'm not going to sit here and tell you it's his promoter. I'm not going to sit here and tell you I don't know if it's his nutritionist. I don't know if it's him. I don't know who it is, right? But all I know is that when these things happen, right, and there's a pattern, and I'm talking about Eddie Reynoso, people are they're gonna go straight to that pattern. So if you're defending Eddie Reynoso, you gotta understand if this happened to Bomac, right? Let's say Bomac and 3 of his fighters in his camp. Let's say Terrence Crawford pops a year later, Keyshawn Davis pops a year after that. What's the super middleweight that's with Crawford? He just fought Diego Pacheco. That guy. Let's say he fights, he pops within another 6 months after that. People are going to go crazy. People are going to go crazy, right? People are going to go crazy. It is part of the game. It's no different from when you're a trainer and you're a bunch of your fighters. That's what everybody was saying about Breadman over this weekend, right? Because his fighters lost on the card. People go crazy just like that. It's like when Derrick James, that 1 year where everybody lost. He went from being trainer of the year, then the next year, Joshua was over there, he lost. What's the other guy? Frank Martin lost. Errol Spence lost. Ryan Garcia lost when he was with him. At the end of the day, these fighters just lose. And they're all part of the same camp. Or fighters test dirty and they're all part of the same camp. People are going to be suspicious. It is what it is. I see people defending it as if like you can't justify people being suspicious of Eddie Reynoso. It's part of the game. It's part of the game. I see people that want to deflect and they want to talk more about what Jamal Charlo said, right? Jamal Charlo made a comment, and I'm going to talk about Jamal shortly. But Jamal made a comment where he's talking about all these guys juicing and Canelo Alvarez and stuff like that. He's talking about a whole lot of things, right? Right. He's talking about his suspicions of Canelo and all that. And it got people rattled as if Canelo failed the test. It doesn't matter if he got a pass for it later on. He failed the test at some point. You know what I mean? So people are going to always bring it up. So what people want to do is deflect. Let's talk more about Jamal Charlo. Let's bring up Floyd Mayweather and his IV from 10 years ago. That's what people do. That's what people do. Selective outrage. Jaime Munguia fails, let's be quiet. This guy fails, let's go crazy. It's going to always be like that. And I think the only problem I have with it, I expect it from the boxing fans, but I don't like it when people have an audience or they make content or they do media, because you can influence people. I think when you're covering the news, I think you should deliver the news the same way every single time. Like I do. When people pop, we talk about it. And I say the same thing every single time. Yo, give them 2 years suspension. If you want people to stop juicing, and if they want to have a clean sport, 2 years suspension. You have to do something that's going to make them feel it in their pockets. That's the only way. If you want guys to be concerned about what they consume in their bodies, that's the only way. But if you're giving them 6 months, if you're giving them a year, you know what I mean? Forget the fans. Forget the fans. Who cares about the biased fans? We already know they're going to be biased. They're never going to stop being biased. Forget them. If the commission decides to 2 years, we're going to hurt your pockets for each drug, it would make people be a little bit more careful on how they move. Right? I mean, that's what I believe. 2 years. And if you have 3 strikes, if there's 3 different occasions where you pop 30, banned for life. That's it. You just shouldn't do it. Victor says 3 years suspension. At least 2. If they change it to 3, I'm cool with that too. You know what I mean? Uncle Jack says, also respectfully, the fighters who are coming up dirty have the biggest fan base over here in the US. There is a nationalistic aspect to making excuses for fighters who get caught. Yeah, I know. That's what I'm saying. Like, you notice that, like, I listen to some people, that make content some now. I think every year that goes past, I limit to who I listen to even more. But I do one thing that's important that I do is I do read comments. I read comments on, the videos, and I do retweets more than I listen to content. And what I will notice is that people like to be overly technical when someone fails a drug test about the details, depending on who it is. You know what I mean? Um, they care, then they go into the amounts like, oh, it's only this amount and it's only that amount. This amount shouldn't be affected in the fight. Okay, but if this guy over here did the same thing, how would you react to it? And this is where the bias comes in. And it'll never stop. All right. But as far as Jaime Munguia popping, I mean, he is a fighter that was never really that good, and he was carefully matched throughout his career. They put him in there in position at the right time from the very beginning. They snuck him in to fight Saddam Ali, who came off that Cotto win when Cotto was far past him. Saddam Ali is a smaller welterweight. He's not even a big welterweight. All right. But he was happened to be an old version of Cotto that night. And Munguia went in there and demolished him because Munguia was a middleweight fighting at junior middleweight. Demolished him. Right? And Saddam Ali has always been chinny on top of that. He was chinny as a welterweight. So for him to get stopped by Munguia was no surprise. All right? But he went on to fight the Liam Smiths of the world, which, again, good fight, solid fight for him at the time. But, the guys like him, Liam Smith, Brandon Cook, Takeshi Inoue, fights like those fights were the fights that were good fights that's going to make him better as a fighter. But they weren't dangerous fights for him at that time. But they almost screwed up. They screwed up with Dennis Hogan because Dennis Hogan won that fight. Pretty clear, 8 rounds to 4. Anybody that watched that fight knows that. But the fight was in Mexico. And no one cares about Dennis Hogan, so they robbed him. But we knew at that point that Jaime couldn't box that well. You know what I mean? We knew at that point. But they continued doing it, giving them the Gary O'Sullivans, the Toriano Johnsons, who I like. I really liked Toriano Johnson. He was good. He was a beast. And then, put him in there with Sarah Meta, put him in there with guys that had been seasoned, but they were past their prime, but they had been in there with other good fighters. So they wanted to not directly put them in there with like the Triple G's and all the other top guys. They didn't want to be direct. They wanted to see if he can beat fighters that's been in there with other fighters better. Beat them better, but not be direct and putting them in there with the top guys that wanted to fight him. And they did this for some time. They did this for many, many years, all the way up. And then they had another scare. They had another scare when they fought Sergey Derevyanchenko, a fight that Derevyanchenko might have won. I mean, I didn't think it was a robbery, but I've seen it a couple of times. It was too good of a fight for me to really be mad. You know what I mean? It's like one of those ones, like I remember people saying that they thought Derevyanchenko won. But when I watched the fight, I enjoyed it too much, the back and forth too much to really be outraged. Maybe I scored it for Derevyanchenko. I can't remember, but I didn't think it was a rob. I thought the Dennis Hogan fight was a rob. And then fighting John Ryder. who I'm probably going to bring up again later in this video because we're talking a lot about 168. But John Ryder is the perfect example of timing. Because even though John Ryder ended up going the distance with Canelo, he took a beating from Canelo. Canelo was punishing him in that fight. And I think those are the fights that make you lose your punch resistance. We've seen it so many times. We've seen it this weekend, in my opinion, with Caleb Plant. I'm going to talk more about that later. But John Ryder, the timing on that was perfect because he had just went the distance with Canelo. And that sold him the fight with Canelo. That earned him the fight with Canelo. So everything was properly placed. And he fought Bruno Saras. Bruno just knocked him out randomly. And it wasn't just a fluke. Because if they felt it was just a fluke, he would have been juicing for this rematch he had with him. They didn't feel confident in Jaime going into that rematch without being on something. They didn't feel confident. Yeah, Munguia and Rosario was good. I think Munguia, all right, so from what I remember from that fight, because it was a good fight, I think at that time there was a lot of momentum with Rosario, because I think this is right after he had knocked out the Uzbekistan fighter that had just fought. What's his name? The little short guy, 168, the body punching guy. Gabe gave him a good fight. Gabe did exactly what he's always did for the most part. Back the bully, yeah, back the mirror, Melikuziev. He gave him a good fight. And it was another one of those fights where it's like Gabe wasn't the favorite to win or anything like that, but like him and Derek Chisora is like the same guy. You know what I mean? Like those guys, for whatever reason, they get older and they end up almost upsetting some of these guys. They end up almost doing things like, I know Derek has been winning some fights recently, but like Gabe has always been that guy. And I think he gave him a good fight. I don't think it was a close fight, but I think it was a good fight. I think he had good moments in the fight. But I think the Derevyanchenko fight was a close fight. And the Bruno Saras fight was the rematch was like safe, because even now that we know that he was on something, even though we know he's on something, I still didn't feel like he was really aggressive. I think there was some concern in him just rushing in and throwing combinations and not, you know, I think he was more defensive. You know, I think working with Eddie and being with Canelo and part of that time, like even with whatever he was on, I don't feel like it made him like Superman. It just gave him enough to edge out a decision win against Bruno, who, in my opinion, Bruno didn't really, you know, I mean, well, Bruno is not really a puncher before that fight. You know what I mean? He was just like a guy that boxed pretty well, not a volume guy. He just caught Jaime with the right shot, the perfect shot. You know, it's kind of like Caleb Plant. Caleb Plant out of nowhere just knocks this guy Anthony Durrell out, like with one of the craziest knockouts of the year that year. But where did that come from? We never seen it before. You know, so it gave more hype going into the David Benavidez fight. You know what I mean? It just was one of those shots that was just out of nowhere. You know? Anyway, it doesn't look good for Jaime because his win against Bruno Saras is probably going to end up being a no contest. So now you got a loss against him. Now you had a win that's going to probably get overturned. And now everybody knows that you're on PEDs. You know? Um, I really don't know what to say. It's just not a good look for him, you know? And he's still in his 20s. But like I said the other day, the last time I saw, he's like, he might end up being one of those guys that's going to be like Victor Ortiz. Victor Ortiz was already out of his prime, like in his late 20s. You know what I mean? Like his prime was a short prime. And then it was always like questionable stoppages where he kind of just gave up and stuff like that. You know, I know he had his jaw broken and want to fight, but a lot of the fights he just kind of like, I'm not, you know what I mean? But yeah, he might be one of those guys where he's looking like food. Um, he just, I don't know, you know. Adrian says that's snack power from Plant. He hasn't been with Snap for the last couple of fights, and it shows. Yeah, man. I'm gonna have to talk about that. All right, I was gonna do it in order. All right, I was gonna talk on Jaime first. All right. I don't know what else to really say. Like again, I really don't care because when I first heard the news, it's not that I don't care that he's juicing. I do care, and I don't want no one to get, I don't want no one cheating. But what I will say is that I don't care in the sense that I always thought he was overhyped. No one really got hurt, you know. Um, Again, he wasn't really aggressive in a fight. I think whatever he was on, it gave him enough, just enough to win on points. But I think he's lost confidence in himself. I think mentally, I think he's just not the same, and I don't want to I'm not basing all of that off one fight. I'm basing that off the fact that he had to go into the rematch on something. You know what I mean? Um, it is what it is. I lost money this weekend. I lost money everywhere. I lost money everywhere that night. I lost money on the Knicks. I don't know why. I don't know why I thought the Knicks was gonna do something that they normally don't do. I don't know what that was all about, but I lost. I had put both fighters on Plant and Charlo on a parlay to win by a knockout, and obviously Plant. Not that I really, I wasn't really because this is something, and I'm going to talk about these two now. I'm going to move on from Munguia. Um, the thing about this is that people got to understand. I know Charlo did his thing. Charlo did his thing, but Charlo definitely fought the weaker opponent, which makes sense because he's not active at all, right? He's fought only a couple times in like 4 years, right? So he's super duper inactive, right? But Plant didn't fight a guy that I was expecting him to lose to. Um, you know what I mean? I just felt like Plant does normally stop his opponents in between those big fights, right? So I was like, all right, I don't think he's gonna get the stoppage tonight, but I think it's worth going, trying to make some money off of it. So I threw him in a parlay, both knockouts. I felt like when I was watching the Jamal Charlo fight, I felt like the ref or his doctor is gonna jump in and stop it prematurely. But I didn't care because Thomas Lamana wasn't doing anything. Right? He was just, let's be real, like he was not doing anything at all. So I was just like, all right, they stop in a fight, but Thomas is just getting knocked around the ring. He got dropped like 3 times. Like, what are we doing here? You know what I mean? Jamal is just taking it easy, and he looked like to me like he was just trying to get the rounds in. Yeah, so I think Jamal Charlo, I mean, from what I took away from that fight is I still think he can be better. I still think him being inactive has made him stay in the same position for a lot of years. I don't think he's really improved. You know, he probably feels good because he's not having to cut down as much. but I definitely want to see him, fit more, look better physically, look better into the division. You know what I mean? Like I want to see a more shredded version of Jamal Charlo. He didn't have a long camp here, so that's understandable. And he wasn't fighting a top guy neither. Resendiz is definitely a better fighter than Thomas Lamana, no doubt, but I did still believe like Jamal was gonna knock this guy out. You know what I mean? Like Lara knocked him out, smoked him in the first round. Like I knew the knockout was coming in at some point. But Jamal Charlo still has a great jab. I think that's the one thing that stands out about him. I don't think he was as aggressive. I think so. When I look at Jamal, right, and I've been following him since I've had a channel even before that, but Jamal to me always had the better jab than his brother, the better power. At one point, he did, but he always had the better jab between the two. That was the one thing that stood out between the two Charles. At one point, he was the bigger puncher. At one point, and I also thought he was a better counterpuncher than his brother, Jamel. Jamel 1.0 wasn't as good as Jamal, in my opinion. But Jamel 2.0, bigger puncher, better pressure fighter, just more action. He's just an animal. You know what I mean? Faster. Jamel is just better to me. He's been better for some time now. Jamal's best performance, in my opinion, at 54 was definitely J-Rock. At 60, it was definitely Derenchenko. Jamal beat Derenchenko better than everybody, in my opinion, because everybody fought him. Everybody fought Derenchenko, right? Like Canelo didn't fight him, but Triple G fought him, Danny Jacobs fought him, and Billy fought him recently, right? Jaime Munguia fought him. Jamal beat him like really, really good. He looked really good in that fight. You know what I mean? And I don't think Derenchenko, he was already a little past it, but Jamal did the best, even against the people that fought him after. But Jamal needs to stay in the ring, and I don't know what happens now because Plant lost. And I know Jamal still want to get his lip back because of the slap. But the problem is, and I'm going to say the same thing that everybody else is saying. Shout out to Boxing Beats and Rhymes. I was listening to his video this morning. I was in here cleaning, and I was listening to him. Still my favorite channel. Boxing Beats and Rhymes and Boxing Gems is my favorite film study channel. All right? Shout out to those two. I was listening to Beats, and Beats was like, you should have just fought Plant. You're both inactive. And I was like, yo, you're right. You're both inactive. Like Plant ain't really, he's not really fighting that much. He fought David Benavidez, went on to fight Munguia, almost lost that fight. And, now he's fighting Resendiz. And I was like, I didn't really think about that. Like, Plant's only fighting once a year. All right. He hasn't fought twice in 1 year since 2021. So it was like, why did we wait? And I guess they were probably just trying to be safe, build up the fight, and try to find a way to make it a pay-per-view. And obviously that's not going to happen now. I mean, they're crazy if they try to make this a pay-per-view. I mean, come on, man. Like, they will though. If they are to have a rematch, right? Because Plant lost to Resendiz, there is a rematch clause. There is a rematch clause. All right, but I mean, this is not a pay-per-view fight, but they were gonna make it a pay-per-view fight. It is what it is. But it's a fight that should happen. Look, man, like I want to see Jamal fight more. If he doesn't fight Plant and Plant ends up fighting Resendiz for a second time, I just want Jamal to be on another card before the end of the year. I want to be realistic. But I would love to see him fight 2 more times, but let's be realistic. We're already in June. He just fought. Realistically, I could see him at least fighting one more time. You know what I mean? Um, I don't know what Plant wants to do, but I think they should just go into a fight because Plant might fight Resendiz in a rematch and lose again. You know, and if he loses to Resendiz again, he's going to completely lose all stock. He already lost some stock here. You know, he's already lost some stock. So if they're trying to make a Jamal Charlo fight or any fight for that matter, that 168, whether it's Edgar Berlanga, whether it's Diego Pacheco, yo, just throw him in there with Charlo now. Forget the rematch clause. Just throw him in there with Charlo. And no, I do not think that Caleb Plant beats Jamal Charlo just for the jab alone. The jab alone is a problem. It's going to be a problem for Caleb Plant. It's going to be a problem for Caleb Plant. I want to talk about that fight. I saw the fight this morning, like the whole thing. I watched it on the night of the fight. I had it on my phone while I was watching the Knicks game. So I couldn't really like focus on the fight, but I just watched it while I was watching the game. And I saw that Plant was clearly losing the fight. But I can't see how you could give Plant more than 4 rounds. I mean, giving him 5 rounds is generous in my opinion. But a split decision, like as in Plant won to one of the judges, 115, 113. You gave Caleb Plant 7 rounds? 7 rounds? Caleb Plant won 7 rounds from one of those judges. Caleb Plant won 7 rounds against Resendiz? Where? And I heard his post fight in there, and I said, "This is not a diss. I like Caleb Plant, but I'm not gonna sit here and like, I don't know him. Like, you know what I mean? Like, we're gonna keep it real. Giving him 5 rounds is generous, but that's understanding, right? 115, 113 for Resendiz. I can understand that, you know, because Caleb Plant is, you know, he has a name. He's supposed to be fighting on the guy that's on a co-main event. He's a former champion. You know what I mean? Like, he's been on pay-per-views. Like, people know him. You know, people like him. I feel like Caleb Plant has turned out to be a really like guy. I think he gives very good interviews. You know what I mean? Like, he's just a likable guy. Yes, please. Thank you, Blaze. Smash that like button, please. Everybody hit the thumbs up for me. Let's get over 50 likes real quick, man. Let's get the likes up. Please do me that favor. I had it 8-4 for Resendiz as well. Yard night. I had it 8-4 for Resendiz. And when I'm watching a fight, I'm not gonna lie, I watched it this morning. Round 1 and 2, which I gave to Caleb, I'm watching and I'm like, Caleb doesn't look like himself to me. You know, like, I've been watching him since he was a prospect. And I was watching and I said, you know, a durable guy is not going to really respect his style right now. And that's why I felt when I seen him fighting Trevor McCumbee. You know, a guy that has a little bit of punch resistance and a little bit of pop and fights is somewhat of a pressure fighter. They're going to beat him. They're going to beat him. It is what it is. Caleb is a slick fighter and everything, but what I saw last night, the counters wasn't countering, the traps wasn't trapping. He doesn't really have the power. He doesn't have the volume, you know, and the worst part about it is his cardio, bro. His cardio is terrible for a guy that stays fit year round. And based on what he says, he dedicates himself to the sport. He stays fit. He doesn't fight like that. I mean, he looks like a fighter that can give you a good 4 or 5 rounds. And he's kind of always looked like that. But before, in those 4 or 5 rounds that he won early, like against Canelo or against Benavidez, those rounds, he looked better in those rounds. You know, like Canelo, he looked really, really good. Like he was really, really sharp. His defense was on point until he started to get tired. But I don't know, man. Like I don't like saying this, but I really hope that Plant is not a shot fire, but he may be. And this goes back to what I was saying to you earlier about like taking punishment. Yo, yeah, we know Canelo knocked him out. He caught him with a good shot late. But I know everybody keeps saying like Benavidez couldn't stop him. Benavidez couldn't stop him. Benavidez didn't stop him, but Benavidez put a punishment on him. Like he punished him. He beat him down, especially in the second half of that fight. He was really beating him down where Caleb had a hold for his life all the way to the end. He held in this fight, but he had to hold David Benavidez because David was really beating him up. You know what I mean? He took a lot of damage to that fight. And I think that's the fight that's made him, his punch resistance is awful now. His cardio is bad and his punch resistance has dropped. You know, and this is for a guy that doesn't throw many punches. But I was watching the fight, man, and like I said, I watch him a lot. I have to go back on his fights a lot. I usually go back to his fights whenever I'm doing film study for Canelo, film study for David Benavidez, so I go back and watch his fights often, right? So I'm watching this fight this morning with Resendiz, and he's trying to load up. There's only one point where he's loading up because he said the right hand. He said his right hand was bothering. I noticed that he wasn't really using the right hand like that. But when he loads up, he's loading up the left hook. And he constantly tried to do that left hook to the body, left hook up top combination, and it didn't work. Resendiz blocked it every time. Like they definitely prepared for that punch. This is the punch that knocked out Anthony Durrell. So he would lead with a left hook to the body, and then he'll pause and then come up with the left hook up top. But Resendiz had that high guard up every single time, or if he didn't have it up, he'll put it up. Right? If anything, he'll take the one to the body, but keep his hands up for the following left hook up top. And that was the one punch that Caleb was planning for, but he just looked slow. Like he looked slow, man. He just didn't look like himself, man. It is what it is. He did not win 7 rounds. He didn't even win 5, in my opinion, but I'll take 5. But 7 rounds is a little bit ridiculous. Like if you want to give him 4 rounds in the first half and then like 1 in the later round, or like the championship rounds, one of those rounds, I can see that. Right? I'm not going to argue that. I gave him 4. But 7 rounds is crazy. Like, come on, man. What are we doing, man? What are we doing? I think the first judge got it right. 116, 112. That's how I scored it. But yeah, Resendiz, for the other hand, I mean, I'm gonna say this. What I didn't like about Resendiz is the headbutts. Right? There was a time in there where like he like tried to lunge in with his head. I didn't like that. Outside of that, I liked him throughout the whole thing. And I'm talking about for the press conference, the weigh-ins, all that. This guy was probably the most relaxed fighter the entire time they were fighting. Every single time Plant would look at and turn and look, the bell would ring, they go to Resendiz, look calm, no reaction. All the way until the point where they raised his hand as the winner, he was calm and cool the entire time. That guy didn't show an ounce of emotion throughout this whole process. Whenever the bell rung, he would walk to his corner. He would walk to his corner, and he just wouldn't You know what I mean? He wouldn't even react to this guy. He just walked to his corner. You do the fighting and then relax. Even in the presser, he didn't get show Plant a lot of respect. You know, he's smiling. I like shit like that. All the pushing, all the disrespect is. I know it gets into. I know it's entertaining. Like I know people they feel like that sell the fights and stuff. Like when Gerald Miller go up there and starts talking crazy, that's cool sometimes. But sometimes you just gotta go up there and just keep a smile on your face and be like, "Yo, I'm gonna destroy. I'm confident I'm gonna beat this guy," and that's the energy I got from Resendiz. You know, um, Resendiz was just better than me. You know, Resendiz applied smart pressure. He wasn't like ultra high volume. He just kept coming forward. Overhand rights, left hooks to the body. If you look at the waist of Caleb Plant, you saw the redness all around his body. He snuck a hook to the body earlier in the fight that hurt Plant, but Plant played it off. But you could see that Plant was clearly hurt from the shot. Hurt Plant a couple of times, wasn't able to drop him, but he forced Plant to hold him at times. Plant had no power in this fight. Again, the only power I saw is when he was winging that left hook from that combination he does, but this guy blocked it every single time. Plant looked slow. Plant looked gas. Plant just looked weak in this fight, you know. In the Trevor McCumbee fight, he was able to make that adjustment and make it a dog fight on the inside. And he was able to smother Trevor's offense and beat him up on his outwork him. I don't think he could do that with Resendiz. He didn't really try to, but I think he felt like Resendiz was stronger. And I just think that he probably wanted to keep the fight on the outside. So without making any adjustments, it just kept going in the same pace for the remainder of the fight. You know what I mean? Again, I don't know what's gonna happen. I don't think Plant should fight Resendiz in a rematch. I don't think Plant almost won the fight. I don't think Plant proves anything by fighting him and beating him in a rematch. I think what Plant needs to do is, I just read this comment from Blaze. He says, Resendiz was Plant's sparring. You know, Resendiz looked like he barely fought at the end of the fight. It was like no damage. You know, going into a rematch, could Plant be better? Absolutely. But this is 2 fights in a row, and I'm not even talking about the loss to Benavidez. This is 2 fights in a row where he just didn't look that good. He didn't look elite, you know? And I know he wanted the Edgar Berlanga fight, but I'll tell you, I'll be the first one to tell you, like, the Edgar Berlanga that I've seen in, like, the last 3 fights, you know, he was in, you know, the McGrory fight, the Canelo fight, and, well, I mean, that fight he had last was just against a journeyman that was totally inactive. So I don't really want to, I don't want to go there with it, but Edgar Berlanga looks better than him right now, you know, and he has been for at least, you know, I mean, Plant lost to Benavidez, so I'm not going to count that. But off his last win and his recent loss, but Edgar Berlanga looks better than him right now. And, you know, Edgar's not going to want to fight him now. And honestly, I don't think Edgar ducked him because Edgar originally told him when they saw each other face to face, like, yo, I'll fight you, but this is when we were hearing rumblings of him fighting. We're talking about Canelo fighting Edgar Berlanga. That's not a duck. If you don't fight Caleb, if Edgar doesn't fight Plant, then goes on to fight Canelo, it's not a duck. You know, and being that Plant went on the fight, David Benavidez lost, came back, looked trash against McCumbee. No, he didn't look trash. He did what he had to do to win, but not against on a level, you know what I mean? Like, that's not the level that I know Caleb Plant on to be on. You know, he did what he had to do to win, but he has not looked that good. He has not looked good. You know, I'll tell you this though. Speaking of 168, 168 is a toss up. I do not think that 168 is an elite division right now. You know, I know you have Canelo there, and I know Crawford's coming up to fight him. But if you remove those two, well, Crawford you don't have to include because he's not at 168. But if you remove Canelo, that division is wide open. It's not much talent there. Like, you know, I think there's a gap in talent at 154 and 175. You got talent there, but 160 and 168, there's not much there for me right now. You know what I mean? I think the gap in talent between those other two divisions down at 54 and up at 175 is a hell of a lot different than what you got at 160 and 168 right now. You know? Yeah, it's just not that much. You know, I actually think guys like the Cuban, Usly's Iglesias, I think that guy would probably beat a lot of these guys right now. You know what I mean? Um, you got Christian Mbili, who is one of the top guys, but I wasn't impressed with his win against Derenchenko. You know, Derenchenko couldn't even move much in that fight. I mean, he looked really old in that fight. You know, Jamal's just coming back into the game. So even though he looked good against a guy that was, you know, pretty easy to hit. Jaime Munguia it's not clean, and he got knocked out in the fight before that. Hamza is just getting there. We got to see what he does against Edgar Berlanga. Diego Pacheco, to me, you know, is just I mean, he's contender territory now, but you know, I think he's another guy that, you know, give or take which day who they put him in there where he might lose. Iglesias is like I just said about him, he's really good, but who's gonna want to fight him if they don't have to fight him? Who's gonna want to fight that guy? Again, I think he will beat a lot of people at 168 right now. I'm not familiar with Kevin Sajo. I don't know him. I'm looking down the box rec list. I don't really know him, so I can't speak on him. But it's not much talent there. You know what I mean? It just isn't that much talent down there right now. I didn't see the Beckhamere fight the other day. I still have to watch that. I have to watch the MJ Akhmadalia fight too. I didn't watch that yet. But this, I'm not sold on any fighter at 168, you know. And Canelo's only getting older. So even if he beats Crawford, if he wins against Crawford, you know, I can see him fighting Jamal Charlo. You know, I think he could fight him, you know, especially with Jamal, the way he's been talking about Canelo. He might want to, you know, Jamal said he wants Canelo more than Plant now. You know, but if Jamal doesn't end up fighting Plant now, let's say Plant decides to take the rematch, right? Because there is a rematch clause with Resendiz. If he does take that rematch and Jamal doesn't have a dance partner next, go straight to, you know, Hamid's not going to be around for Lega. You're not going to fight Iglesias. Fight Christian Mbili. Fight him. I think Jamal can beat Christian. I think Christian he's a pressure fighter, you know, but he's a pressure fighter that I've seen gas out. And outside of that pressure and being explosive, I don't see many skills. Jamal Charlo with that jab, always been a durable fighter, never been knocked down. I think Jamal beats him. And I think if he were to win that fight, I think he would be a top contender at 168 that quickly. Or go after the younger, inexperienced Diego Pacheco, who's looking to fight someone to put him in position for a big fight. You know? Someone said earlier he should fight Steven Nelson. That's what I was thinking about earlier too when I was talking about the Bomac situation, or I'm giving an example of Bomac. Uh, if he can't get a fight and he wants to stay busy, he should definitely fight Steven Nelson. Because Steven Nelson is going to give him a way better fight than Thomas Lamana, in my opinion. I would still have Charlo winning that one, but I think Steven Nelson is going to give him a tough fight, just like he did with Diego Pacheco. All right. Let me see. Let me read some of the comments. Uncle Jack says, I've never been sold on Billy. He's 168 version of Tavoris Cloud. I see where you're going with it, but I don't think they fight exactly alike. But I see where you're going with it. That was a weak, very weak period of the light heavyweight division at the time. The time where B Hop, and I love B Hop, legend, all-time great, but the 175 division was weak at the time when he was really old and beating everybody up there. Those guys were not that good, until Kovalev, got to him. But yeah, weak division at the time. And Billy is just not that good of a boxer, in my opinion. I think if you could take his power and outbox him a little bit and play the long game, like I could see him getting beat up and outbox and possibly stop. Gio says it's nothing at 168. Yeah, I wouldn't say nothing, but it's not a top tier division right now. It's not. Shrey says Charlo would be better off getting a big fight at 175 than waiting on Canelo. No, I wouldn't say that. There's only one big fight for him at 175, and that's if he were to fight Benavidez. I can't see him just. I don't think Charlo has the momentum right now enough to just go up to 175, 75 and fight Benavidez or Bivol. You know what I mean? I think those two. Benavidez is going to either fight. I don't know who he's going to fight exactly, but I think that's the only fight that would be bigger than any other fight at 168. But Canelo has a 4-fight contract with Turki Al-Sheikh. And I think that if Canelo is to beat Terrence Crawford and wants to stay at 168, he might fight Charlo. He might fight Eubank. I really don't know. Just says Jamal should just fight David at 168. Okay, that's what I was pretty much saying. Yard says, how would Canelo versus Resendiz go? I would have Canelo winning the fight. If he chooses to, he can knock him out. But, Canelo hasn't really been stopping guys like that. I don't know if he's going to hold up Resendiz like he did Jaime Munguia. You know what I mean? Because that's exactly what he did in that fight, because he's a Mexican fighter. So I really don't know. Lance says that Golden Boy card was kind of lit. Yeah, the card I didn't see. But, I'll take a seat on one of these days and get some time. I don't know when I'm going to get into it because I have to do some breakdowns for these fights this weekend, man. We got some big fights this weekend. So as soon as I get off this live, and do what I have to do here, I definitely have to find some time to do some film studies for these breakdowns. You know what I mean? Ralph says, I'm not sold on Berlanga. To be honest, I'm not sold on anyone at 168. No one at 168, I feel like I'm not sold on Mbili. I'm not sold on Pacheco. I'm not sold on Berlanga. I'm not sold on Shiraz. I'm not sold on Charlo return. I don't know. I don't know. I would say I'm sold on Charlo because he's a 2-division champion, but he's inactive. but I know exactly what he does, and I know what he's good at. I think everybody else, I'm still learning about them fight by fight, you know. But Charlo has the experience. All of these other guys, I really don't know what they could really do at a high level. I don't know yet. You know what I mean? All right. Listen, that's the end of today's wave report. I'm gonna get on out of here, man. I just wanted to do like a quick hour with you guys. I will be dropping some breakdowns next. Okay. I have to do some breakdowns. I still have to make content talking about Manny Pacquiao and Barrios. The reason why I haven't made that yet is because I don't know exactly how I feel about that fight, like as far as exactly how I think it's gonna go, because and I'll talk more about this when I do the breakdown, but I don't know. Like I think every detail is important to me because I don't rate Barrio that high. I think he's a good fighter. I think he's a solid fighter, but I think he got a belt based on the opportunity that was there at the time that he got it, right? Like I always say, I think when certain fighters take a beating in certain fights, even if they win or even if they go the distance, Ugas, he got pummeled by Spence. Durability was shot. You know what I mean? So Barrios beat his ass. It is what it is. I've said the same thing about Jared Hurd. Yeah, Hurd won the fight against Lara, but he took a lot of damage in that fight, and he was never the same fighter again. So yeah, he won, but was he the same after that? Absolutely not. His punch resistance was shot. I think the same with Caleb Plant. From what I'm seeing, that David Benavidez fight that he went the distance with, who he went the distance with, yeah, he went the distance, but he took a punishment. He took a beating in that fight. And his punch resistance is shot, in my opinion. Took much longer for Canelo to really hurt him than some of these other guys. His punch resistance shot. Same thing with John Ryder. Went the distance with Canelo, but he was softening up for Jaime Munguia. I mean, this has always been a thing. This has always been a game. It's not about just getting knockouts. Sometimes the knockouts, you get less damage from that. Some of these guys, rest in peace to all the fighters that lost, lives fighting and stuff like that. But some of them passed away because of the damage that they took throughout the 10, 12 rounds of punishment that they took, not just all straight knockouts. Going 12 rounds and getting beating, hitting the head over and over and over again, that does more damage. And I think some of these guys, like a Caleb Plant, you know, and like a Ugas or whoever. But when it comes to that fight, man, I really don't know. Is there going to be drug testing for the fight? All right, that's my first question. Is there going to be drug testing for the fight? Manny Pacquiao, I know a lot of people are talking about the DK exhibition fight where he looked like he lost. I think Manny Pacquiao is going to be better prepared than he was in that fight. But he's not going to be better than what he was against Ugas. And if you watch the Ugas fight, because I did go back and watch some of that fight because it's on YouTube on the PBC channel. Pacquiao never looked good in that fight to me. You know what I mean? Like, I think he's doing good for a guy at the time he was 42. He's 46 now. Yeah, he looked good for a 42-year-old, right? He's still very fast for a 42-year-old. But the power has been gone, right? The power has been gone for some time, right? I mean, he still hits hard, but he's not a KO artist. The speed is still there, but this could be a 12-round fight. Y'all got to remember that. And even though Barrios don't have good conditioning either, I don't know. I think Pacquiao will definitely be winning early like he was against Keith Thurman. But I think at some point in that fight, he's going to get burnt out. You know what I mean? I think he is. Hopefully by that time, Barrios is burnt out too. But I don't like, it's risky at 46. It would be pretty cool to see Pacquiao win. But at the same time, it's like, I hate to say it, don't I really don't care about this fight too much. You know, like I want to see the young guys do their thing. I want to see the young guys unify over this. That's just how I really feel about it. Like I don't want to see Pacquiao come back. I don't want to see Floyd come back. You know, I don't want to see these guys come back. You guys had your time. You guys made hundreds of millions of dollars. You guys had your time. Now, if he chooses to still fight, that's on him. I hope he doesn't get hurt, but you got to remember he's a grown man. He's choosing to come back, and they're giving him a title shot on his first fight back. So I believe by this time, this fight, he may be the oldest of all time. I think Hopkins was 46 as a champion. I don't know by date. I don't know if that would make Pacquiao the oldest. I don't know if he were to win. But I do believe that if the fight is even competitive, they're giving it to Pac for sure. Because they want to make that fight with him and Tank. Because that will be the fight. If Pacquiao beats him, Tank will probably move up to 47 and fight. You know. Yeah, but 4 years, you know, and I'm not including the exhibition, but 4 years is a long time for a guy that's in his 40s and not fight. Just to come back and fight Barrios. Like Barrios, no, I don't rate him. I think he's one of the weaker champions in the sport, but he's still pretty good. You know what I mean? He's still a world champion. You know, not everybody can be a world champion. Regardless of how you feel about the division and, you know, if it's weak or not, not everybody can be a world champion. All right. Anyway, I'm out of here, man. I'll make a video on that, man, as soon as I figure things out. And y'all have a good day, man. Subscribe to the channel. Again, thank you guys. I'll be sending the Cashapp, please. Thanks for the donations. And I will see you. I got to start doing some breakdowns for this week. So we'll get to that later. All right. Peace.